In 1981, there was a murder so shocking that it changed the entertainment world forever, yet the killer was never brought to justice. Now, almost 40 years later, we're reopening the case, reviewing old leads as well as new evidence, to try and make sense of a killing which gave rise to a massacre. The who, what, why, and how of when video killed the radio star. Welcome to the Radio Star Murders.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Radio Star Murders. We're going to be talking music videos. We break them down on this show. My name is Wes Teasel. I'm joined by Clay McCormick. Clay, this is my week. I chose the song, and I have chosen for our listening pleasure 1985's Tears for Fears Shout video. It's written
This band should have been called Teeth.
Teeth for Shouting was the original name of the band.
Emotional Teeth.
So I mostly... I know that we're supposed to be doing this as like a music video analysis type thing. I will admit freely that a lot of my choices tend to sometimes just be driven by the song, really. Like I'm unfamiliar with the video, so I pick the song that I'd like to talk about, and then we just kind of segue into the video with it. But I wanted to choose this one because I really have gotten into this album recently. I think there's a argument to be made. It's maybe, the way that... Nirvana's Nevermind could be seen as like the album that defined the 90s. I think this album could kind of be seen as the album that defines the 80s in a lot of ways.
Really?
Yeah, it's really good. There's only like 8 songs on it, but 4 of them are singles. It has that 80s sound to it, and 80s pop tends to get this sort of like, how we talked about on the Star Trek podcast, how Captain Kirk kind of has a cultural impact that is not really representative of what the character was on the TV show. Like he's seen a different way. I think that 80s pop is seen that way at this point, where people kind of poo-poo it and toss it to the side. And it's actually probably my favorite era of pop music. I think that songwriting in the 80s was really strong and really good. And there was a musicality to the production that was still kind of sparse, but it wasn't this bombastic modern pop thing where everything is just crunched down and then compressed all the way up, and then they just maximize it to like, -1 decibel so that everything is just loud and in your face. There was still kind of a musicality even to the synth stuff that they were doing in the 80s. And I think this song and this band and this album is one of my favorite albums, and I think it really accomplishes all of that. I really like this song, and I really like the album.
Well, not to sound like an old man, but I think the difference is that in the 80s they were still musicians. Like a lot of pop music now is not that the people making it are not musicians, but they have
producers involved.
Yeah, it's very producer forward. And this stuff, the guys making this stuff were actually, they could play instruments and they were writing songs and they were good at it. Like I did the same thing. I always poo-pooed 80s music as being just, garbage and whatever, especially like Duran Duran. I would always think of Duran Duran as nothing more than a punchline. And then I sat down and I listened to Duran Duran. Those guys are fucking good.
Yeah.
That's a great band.
Well, it's going to tie into the way I talk about this video. I don't want to do it yet, but the 80s aesthetic ruins people's perception of the music.
That's fair. That's very fair. Yeah.
And I think Duran Duran is seen as like this sort of like pretty boy Hollywood-esque pop music thing, but they actually write really great pop music. It's like they're a great band, but their image looks kind of ridiculous. And I think that Tears for Fears suffers the same thing. If you listen to this album and the song, you think one thing, and then if you watch their music videos, you go, oh God.
Yes. That's a really good way to put it. Yeah.
That's kind of what it is. Just listen to the album. Don't watch the videos for this stuff, and you'll be impressed. Although I will say that these guys, I've been watching modern shows of theirs on YouTube. They've aged very well. They look really good now in their late 50s. But back when this is going on, who knows? What did you think of the song? I've talked enough.
I like the song.
I should do the introduction, I guess, too. I'm sorry, I forgot.
Yeah.
In the mid-1980s, this is my explanation of the video. In the mid-1980s, the love child of Jerry Seinfeld and John Cryer wanders with some other guy on a deserted beach, shouting into the void. After a brief musical segue, we move inside, where the band brings a high school talent show audience on stage for a sing-along. And that's pretty much it. So what did you think of the song, Clay?
I like the song. I've always liked the song. I haven't really explored much of their other stuff before. I'll be interested. I'll probably go back and listen to that album, though, because apparently it's better than Purple Rain, is what I'm hearing from you.
It is more quintessential of what the 80s sounded like, I think. Purple Rain is obviously a better album, yeah.
Yeah, I think I understand what you mean. The really interesting thing about this video for me is, I feel like the thing that's slowly emerging as we do this, or maybe quickly emerging, is that there seems to be a limited sort of classification system for different types of videos. And we've kind of hit a lot of them so far. And this one is one that is very much quintessentially 80s, which is, it's not a live performance video. I guess it kind of becomes one at the end, but the thrust of it is lip syncing in a cool place.
Yes, yeah.
Duran Duran also does this. We'll probably get to one of those videos at some point. Those videos are great, but it's a lot. You go to a great high production value place like these English, I'm assuming English mountains or wherever they are.
Yeah, they're on some kind of
cliffs of Dover or whatever. And it's kind of like this feels like the prototype for like the Pure Moods commercial, where it's just a lot of like earthy, beautiful vistas and some sort of kind of emotional music. And it oddly works really well, even though all it is just these two guys yelling in front of a hill.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of, it's them yelling into the ocean.
Yes.
But also they shoot it in a lot of different ways. So there's the one where the guy is sort of behind the other one and they're off. They're like a 45-degree angle, but they're both looking in the same direction. And then there's one where the overlay is the guy's face is sort of photoshopped over the ocean and he's singing. As you mentioned, it's very distracting because they're not particularly attractive dudes and their teeth are very odd looking. They're both kind of odd looking guys at this point in their lives. And so the focus becomes looking at their weird faces, I think, over anything else.
And it's interesting because they don't, like if you watch like a Motley Crue video or like the Queensryche video or whatever, there's a visual component to the band that is very important that they're trying to get across in these videos. But this one, it looks like they just showed up in the clothes they were wearing and just, after they got off their shift working as a substitute teacher or something and just shot this music video.
Yeah.
And there's like no curated aesthetic to the way they look. And it's a really interesting thing that happens in early music videos where the visual component has not been completely considered. Like I'm going to have to watch some of these guys' other videos that come after this and see if they change at all.
If you watch, I think they're all kind of the same. If the other video to watch that I would recommend from them is Head Over Heels, because it is similarly sort of goofy and it takes a great song. And when you watch the video, you go, I don't know what to think about this anymore, because the video doesn't seem to be taking the song as seriously as it should.
Yeah. I'll be honest with you. I'm watching it right now without the sound on, and it's a strange video. Shout. I'm watching Shout again with on mute, and it's an interesting experience without the music.
So if I were to go deeper on this, I would say that Shout is an interesting video that actually does sort of capture what the song is about in both a misconception way and a real kind of way. So the popular conception of the song is that it's kind of an emo song. Like it's sort of saying like, get your feelings out or whatever. Like it's better to unbottle and shout, let it all out and like let your emotions out. And you're feeling very emotional about this. And that's kind of what the Cliffs of Dover stuff represents. It's like yelling into the emotional void and no one's hearing you kind of thing. However, the lyrics of the song aren't really about that. It's really more of a call to action song than anything. And what's funny is that when it moves into the segue of the crowd singing along with them, that actually to me summarizes what the song is more about than anything. And it's weird that they put that emotional disconnect at the front. Although I do think that the song has an emotional disconnect of like you being on your own and protesting your own kind of beliefs and stuff like that. But the call to action thing is summarized more by there's like grandmothers and little kids in the audience in the second half. And like there's people from all walks of life singing along to this song, which is about walking your own path, not listening to authority figures. And it's more political than it is an emotional song to me anyway.
Yeah, and I actually, on first watch, I was thinking, wow, this kind of weird. Like it seemed kind of disjointed that they were out in the world in nature, and then they're doing this like Hey Jude sing along thing at the end. But I actually think it works really nicely because it matches the crescendo of the end of the song, and
which is a long song for a video.
It is.
Like over
it's
6
surprisingly
minutes,
long. Yeah. But yeah, it sort of like works in two stages thematically, and I think what you're saying is true. It is kind of a call to action where the first part of it is them, expressing this call to action, and the end is like, the I'm mad as hell, I'm not going to take it anymore thing where everybody's joining in at the end. I think it works pretty well. Yeah. As weird as it is, where it's clearly like everybody, their family probably. Yeah. With the amount of like same to similar ages, but with a few older people and some kids, I'm like, all right, this is definitely like uncles, cousins, and nephews and nieces and stuff.
Yeah, friends and family of the band have joined to do this sort of sing along and stuff like that.
And it's looking at if you compare this kind of video to say the Queensryche video, or is that the only like live performance one we've done so far? I guess it kind of is. Oddly, I think again, it's a thing of the 80s where people were focusing on different things. Even though this has a live performance quality to it at the end, it's focused, like I said, more on people just sort of like lip syncing in a mood setting. And they seem to do that a lot more with these bands that are not necessarily known for instrumentation.
Yes.
Like,
you know what's weird about, I'll say it quickly and go back to you.
Yeah.
My favorite part of this song, the video, is the interlude between the beaches and the sing-along is a sort of close-up of the instruments playing, because they have this little musical interlude break.
Yeah, yeah.
And what's funny is when I hear Tears for Fears, I don't associate it with real instruments. It sounds very electronic, but they are, when you see them played on video, you're like, oh, it's clearly the bass is playing that ba-do-ga don't line, and then the keys are playing over and stuff. But the video is funny because it highlights that they are actually a band, and it's not just this electronic sort of synth thing going on. It is synth pop, but it's not a totally electronic, divorced from instrumentation thing.
Yeah, exactly. I don't when I listen to this song or listen to this band, I don't think of guitars and drums and keyboards actively being played. And as much as you do with like a heavy metal band or a classic rock and roll kind of band.
Even U2 and stuff like that. That sounds
Yeah. So it's interesting that they've found this sort of like middle ground for these groups where it's very much image focused, but they do kind of tack on, because I don't think Duran Duran does much live performance stuff. I think it's mostly just them in like a location lip syncing and stuff.
For the videos you're talking about.
Yeah, for the videos. So it's gonna be interesting comparing these to other to see what direction these groups choose to go in. Especially because this one I don't think of Tears for Fears as like an image conscious band. Or even a band. I don't really know what I think of them, to be honest with you. I guess just a couple of guys is kind of what I think of. So maybe it's very accurate.
I think it's just a couple of guys with huge hair and huge teeth, basically. Is like that's.
Yeah, in that case, it does a very good job of representing the band.
And I guess I'll just finish on the point of the 80s. I think that the pop songwriting and the instrumentation on this album is really fantastic. I love the way it sounds. I think production is really slick. I like their voices. I like the way that they duet with each other, or they sort of like layer their voices on top of each other. And the song in this album works better if you do not see them. Seeing them is such an artifact of the 80s that it's like, this is that like, you wonder, were they cool in context of the time? Like, were people watching this going like, look at how cool these motherfucking guys are. Like, looking back on it now feels totally different from looking at something like a Guns N' Roses video, where you could be like, I can understand why these guys would be considered cool back then, and they're still kind of cool now. But Tears for Fears is really in that sweet spot of the 80s where the fashion is bad, the look is bad, the music was very good, unfortunately, and then all this other aesthetic stuff kind of knocked the music off its pedestal.
Yeah. I'm gonna be interested moving forward, especially when we talk about other videos from this kind of era. Which ones choose to go more look at the band playing instruments, and which ones go more look at the band.
This band made a mistake by inserting themselves into the music videos to the way that they did. Like, this is I was trying to, if I were to reshoot this one, it would be one of those videos I would just put like a clip montage of political stuff on top of it. And maybe you'd add some other kind of story narratives, but it's not really, not a narrative song. So you can't have a narrative video to it that would make sense, I don't think.
Yeah, and I that's the musical interlude actually kind of that stood out to me in that aspect where there is no real story to this video. So what do you do? What sort of story do you tell over that part that doesn't have any lyrics to it? And so here they chose to just do close-ups of the instruments playing, and I guess it's fine, but it does bring forward the fact that this style of video generally does not have a narrative, and so you have to think about how do you fill the time and what images are you trying to present when there's no musical story to go with it. Yeah,
that's a good point, but. We'll wrap it up there. I would recommend everyone listen to this. It's called Songs from the Big Chair. Came out in 1985 by Tears for Fears. Had the hit singles Mother's Talk, Shout, Everyone Wants to Rule the World, Head Over Heels, and I Believe. It is their best-selling album to date. And there's only 3 other songs on it, so it's one of those albums that every song is basically like a hit.
You know what album, not to go completely off topic, really, but you know what album I am constantly amazed is like front to back, nothing but hits? Is the first Boston album.
Yeah.
Have you ever looked at the track listing for the Boston album? Holy shit.
Same with the Cars debut is that way too. Yeah.
Yeah. And also I would say, I don't know, I think this might, you put this up against Sports by Huey Lewis for the album of the 80s. I think there might be a bit of a fight there.
The Cars had that great joke about like they were like, well, are you guys going to release the greatest hits? And they're like, just buy our first album.
Yeah.
Like it's that kind of thing. But yeah, those albums are it is a special thing when the albums are jam packed with stuff. It's just like, wow, it's not just a one hit or a 2-hit thing. You actually had a whole album here where you guys were basically knocking everything out of the park.
And then you get to like their 4th or 5th album and you're kind of like, these guys are still doing it, huh?
Still out there, still acting, still doing that stuff. But that's it. Songs from the Big Chair. We did the song Shout by Tears for Fears. Thank you very much. Clay, do you have your next video lined up? Do you want to announce it now or we have to think about it?
I think so. Man, there's so many I want to do. I had like a bunch of them in mind for the next one, but I think we're going to jump to the 90s again and do Runaround by Blues Traveler.
Okay. Sounds good. Sounds good to me. I do
That's
like.
all I have to say about that.
I do like Blues Traveler, so we'll be interested.
Has enough time passed where one can comfortably say I like Blues Traveler, or is that have we now officially entered middle age? Now we're like, no, yeah, man, Blues Traveler's great.
My father bought the album. He had the green neon background with the cat.
Yeah, with the cat on it. I had it on cassette.
Yeah.
I can't remember if I mentioned this on the Bohemian Rhapsody podcast, but that movie came up at Thanksgiving dinner this past year, and my aunt was talking about how she saw Queen at the Boston Garden in the 70s, and I was like, oh man, that's so awesome. And she said, yeah, I was there to see Billy Squier, but Queen was pretty good too. And I was like, yeah, that's me being like, yeah, man, Blues Traveler, not a bad band.
That's right. Everyone comes into their own thing. You just have to shout, let it all out. These are the albums that we want to talk about. That's it. Songs from the Big Chair. The band is Tears for Fears. The song is called Shout. You guys should check out the album. It is a recommendation, and I chose this video mostly because of the album. I wanted to recommend it. But we'll be back with Blues Traveler. You want to support the show? There is all the social media links down below. You can go to patreon.com/the Pensky File because this show is a part of a whole bunch of other shows. And then you can do the PayPal
we didn't
thing
do
and the t-shirts.
we didn't do is this video successful or not?
I think this video you go first.
I don't know. Well, I don't know if this video necessarily boosts the song.
No, I think this video, I don't even think it's a bad video, but I think that this video knocks the song down a little bit. Like it's better, as I've said, it's better to listen to this album and song without seeing them perform it in a video.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say that in this case, this video does not help the song. Yeah.
Even though I think it thematically kind of works, it's really done in by the cheesiness of the production techniques at the time. Just the way they look and the way that they overlay things and the way that everything is set up and shot is kind of silly.
It's like 6 minutes of one of those photographs where it's got you small in the foreground and then like a slightly less opaque version of you larger in the background.
Mm-hmm. Like a Russian nesting
doll.
About? Yep. That's exactly what
you know what I'm talking about.
That's it. So we both kind of agreed that the music video does end the song. So it is not a case of video killing the radio star. You can check out all the links down below: Facebook, blah, 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 Twitter. There's all Patreon, there's PayPal, there's the merchandise store. And then that's about it. Guys, thank you very much for listening. We'll be back next week with Blues Traveler. It sounds like. If we're not, it'll just be because we pulled the ripcord at the last moment. But it should be Blues Traveler. We will see you in a couple of days. See ya.